The grand halls of the Celestial Ascendancy, the flagship of the Zynari Empire, were silent. The once vibrant corridors, adorned with shimmering crystalline walls and glowing bioluminescent flora, now felt cold and lifeless. Princess Lyranna, heir to the Zynari throne, stood at the center of the command deck, her iridescent scales dulled by the dim emergency lighting. Her 4 arms trembled as she clutched the hilt of her ceremonial energy blade. Around her, the bodies of her royal guard lay motionless, their once gleaming armor scorched and broken. The ship had been ambushed by the Kryxx, a ruthless species of mercenaries who had somehow bypassed the Zynari Empire's defenses. The Kryxx were known for their brutality, and they had made it clear they wanted Lyranna alive, likely to ransom her back to her people or use her as a political pawn. But Lyranna would sooner die than let herself be captured. As the sound of heavy boots echoed down the corridor, she tightened her grip on her blade. The Kryxx were coming. She was alone, her communications jammed, and her ship crippled. There was no escape, or so she thought. The Kryxx soldiers burst onto the command deck, their jagged armor glinting in the dim light. They moved with predatory precision, their weapons trained on Lyranna. She raised her blade, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "You will not take me alive," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. The Kryxx leader, a hulking figure with a scarred exoskeleton, chuckled darkly. "Brave words, princess. But you're outnumbered and outmatched. Drop the blade, and we might make this painless." Before Lyranna could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the ship. The Kryxx soldiers stumbled, their weapons faltering. From the smoke and debris a figure emerged, a human. Lyranna's eyes widened in disbelief. Humans were a relatively new species to the galactic stage, known for their resilience and adaptability but often dismissed as primitive and emotional. This human, however, was unlike any she had ever seen. He wore a battered exosuit, its paint scorched and scratched, and carried a weapon she didn't recognize, a hybrid of ballistic and energy technology. His face was obscured by a helmet, but his movements were calm, deliberate, and utterly devoid of fear. The Kryxx leader snarled and turned his weapon on the human. "Who are you?" "This is none of your concern, fleshling." The human didn't respond. Instead, he raised his weapon and fired. A burst of energy tore through the Kryxx leader's armor, sending him crashing to the ground. The remaining Kryxx soldiers opened fire, but the human moved with unnatural speed, dodging their attacks and returning fire with deadly accuracy. Within moments, the command deck was littered with the bodies of Kryxx soldiers. Lyranna stared at the human, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The human removed his helmet, revealing a face that was as cold and unreadable as his actions. His eyes were a piercing gray, and his expression was devoid of emotion. "Captain Elias Kane," he said simply. "I'm here to get you out." As they made their way through the crippled ship, Lyranna couldn't help but study the human. He moved with a precision and efficiency that was almost machine-like. His every action calculated and devoid of hesitation. He spoke little, only giving short, clipped orders when necessary. There was no warmth in his voice, no hint of compassion or empathy. He was, in every sense of the word, heartless. And yet he had saved her. "Why?" she finally asked as they reached the escape pods. "Why did you come for me? You owe no allegiance to the Zynari Empire." Kane paused, his hand hovering over the control panel. "I don't," he said. "But the Kryxx are a threat to everyone. Taking you out of their hands weakens them." That's reason enough. Lyranna frowned. So this is just a strategic move. You care nothing for my life. Kane turned to her, his expression unreadable. Your life has value. But so do the lives of everyone else the Kryxx would harm if they had you as leverage. This isn't personal, princess. It's practical. His words stung, but Lyranna couldn't deny their truth. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this human than he let on. The escape pod jettisoned from the celestial ascendancy, leaving the crippled ship behind. As they hurtled through space, Lyranna glanced at Kane, who was busy monitoring their trajectory. Where are we going? She asked. To my ship, Kane replied. It's cloaked and waiting nearby. Once we're aboard, I'll take you to the nearest Zynari outpost. Lyranna nodded, her mind racing. She had so many questions, but Kane's cold demeanor made it clear he wasn't interested in conversation. Instead, she focused on the situation at hand. The Kryxx had attacked her ship with alarming precision, suggesting they had inside information. If that was true, then her people were in even greater danger than she had realized. As if reading her thoughts, Kane spoke. The Kryxx didn't act alone. Someone gave them access to your ship's defenses. Lyranna's eyes widened. You think there's a traitor among my people? Kane nodded. It's the only explanation. The Kryxx are good, but they're not that good. Someone on the inside helped them. The thought sent a chill down Lyranna's spine. If there was a traitor in the Zynari Empire, then no one was safe. She needed to warn her people, but first she needed to survive. Kane's ship, the Eclipse, was a sleek, heavily modified vessel that looked like it had seen more than its fair share of battles. As they boarded, Lyranna couldn't help but notice the sparse interior. There were no personal touches, no signs of sentimentality. It was as cold and utilitarian as its captain. Kane wasted no time, immediately setting a course for the nearest Zynari outpost. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, Lyranna finally worked up the courage to ask the question that had been nagging at her. Why do you do this? She asked. Why risk your life for strangers? Kane didn't look at her, his eyes fixed on the controls. Because someone has to, he said simply. The galaxy is a dangerous place, princess. If people like me don't stand up to threats like the Kryxx, then who will? Lyranna studied him, her curiosity growing. But you don't care about the people you save, do you? You see them as... what? A means to an end. Kane finally turned to her, his gray eyes piercing. I care about results, he said. If saving lives is a byproduct of that, then so be it. But I don't do this for gratitude or recognition. I do it because it needs to be done. His words were harsh, but Lyranna couldn't help but admire his honesty. In a galaxy filled with deceit and self-interest, Kane's brutal pragmatism was almost refreshing. When they arrived at the Zynari outpost, Lyranna was greeted by a contingent of her people, their relief palpable. As she stepped off the Eclipse, she turned to Kane, who remained on the ship. Thank you, she said, her voice sincere. I owe you my life. Kane shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Just do what you can to stop the Kryxx. That's all the thanks I need. Before Lyranna could respond, the Eclipse's engines roared to life, and the ship disappeared into the void. She stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where it had been, her mind racing. Kane was an enigma, a man who seemed to care for nothing and yet